Welcome everybody to BioStock Live, coming to you from Stockholm. We are delighted to be in the new headquarters of the news agency Direkt. It's the first time for us here. It's also the last BioStock Live of the year. This time we will focus on medtech and diagnostics, and we have 5 very interesting companies who are going to present for us today. My name is Jonas Söderström. I am the CEO and editor of BioStock, and I'm very proud to welcome today's first speaker, who is the CEO of SensoDetect, Johan Olsson. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Johan Olsson, and I'm representing SensoDetect. We are working with improving the lives of people with mental illness. As you probably know, the mental illness in the world is a huge problem. So we are developing a solution to improve the life of people with mental illness through an objective test. We want to integrate this test into the normal assessments that the doctors do as an objective extra assessment that they can use in their diagnosis. As you probably know, there is a long queue in most countries for getting a diagnosis, and especially for getting a treatment. Most diagnosis is set in a subjective way. They are doing ordinary questionnaires and assessment forms and many meetings with doctors and psychologists to set a diagnosis. It's not uncommon that it takes 1-2 years to get the first diagnosis to be set. And it's not that uncommon that they also, after getting a diagnosis, seeks new tests and do a reassessment of their diagnosis as a patient. The cost for the community is, of course, quite high, and the people suffering from mental illness often have problems with sick leaves and financial problems and so on. So the mental illness is a huge global problem. We have at any time about 450 million people suffering from mental illness in the world. Suffering from mental illness is a problem, of course, for the private person, but it's also a problem for the surrounding family and friends, since they are also affected in many ways. And as I said, they have a lot of problems, generally, with shorter lifespan, the risk for suicide. They have economic problems and so on, which makes this a very important target group. So the cost of setting a diagnosis is quite high, it takes quite a lot of time, and it's quite complex. In addition to this, it's the costs for the society and the person himself, and of course in employment, retirement, early retirement, sick leaves and so on. The estimate for the EU is about 4% of the GMP, which in the US is about $148 billion US, which is quite a lot of money. But it's also a local problem. We must remember that the mental illness problem is not only for the one that is actually sick. It affects people surrounding. If you have a child with ADHD, for example, then it's very common that you also have a parent that is somewhat sick or stressed out or have a problem that will result in economical difficulties for the whole family. This picture is from a newspaper here in Sweden. It says cut the queues and diagnosis time to get to treatment of ADHD. What I want to show with this is that this senior doctor from north of Sweden says it's a huge problem for society that it takes 30-40 hours to get to a diagnosis. And then you should remember that 30-40 hours is not in a sequence. You have a lot of waiting time between this, so therefore it will be 1, maybe 2 years until you get the set of a diagnosis and can start the treatment. So what can we use our technology for? Well, it's a test. It's not a diagnosis. It's a test that gives you a first proof or somewhat an idea of what is the problem. So in the first step, we show the doctor that it's typical deviations, for example, for ADHD or for schizophrenia or for autism. Then the doctor can send the patient into further specialist treatment and diagnosis. And in the next step, they can use it in depth for together with other assessments to make sure that they get the best set of diagnosis that is possible. And in the next step, we can also make sure and see the effect of the treatment in form of medications. We can see the difference before and after you have taken the medication to the treatment. So it makes it much faster, much easier, and much simpler, and it's objective. It's always the same result from our system. So this is the objective results that Bera gives you. Fast and reliable, it takes about 30 minutes. And you can do a follow-up test and see if there is any difference after taking the medication. This is the huge benefit, that you can actually see if the tablet you take have any effect at all. So what are we offering? The product itself looks like this. It's a system that measures the brainstem's response to sound, and it's a clicking sound, very easy. But we then get a curve or the data that we can analyze and see the deviations from a healthy control group and also the different diagnosis groups. So we can see and plot the differences to the doctor to make it easier for her or him to set a diagnosis. It's also included in this system an assessment form, which is the basis for all psychology assessments today. We have included a digital version of these assessment forms so that you get this as well as our data. And in the end, everything is set with our algorithms to show the doctors the report on deviations from the brainstem and also the results from a standard assessment form. So we offer the assessment form, which is the standard. When they come to us or to the clinic, they will get a headphone. They will get 2 electrodes in the forehead, 1 behind the ear and 1 on the arm. They will sit down in a chair, resting, or if they like, sleeping. Before they go to sleep, they need to do the assessment form, of course. They have a 5-minute break where they do the assessment form. Then we start the measurement. The measurement takes 15 minutes. After that, the patients can go home and the doctor will receive the results. This is the workflow. The patient goes for a test, sends to our systems, which is analyzed and sent to the doctor, not to the treater or the test person, because the doctor will have to assess the results, of course, and also weigh in other assessment forms and so on, and maybe a psychologist's interpretation of the patient and so on. After that, they will tell the patient, of course, the diagnosis, and they will go on to treatment and maybe do a new Bera test to see if the treatment works. But also, very important for us is that we want the doctor to send us the information back so that we can get the actual diagnosis they have set. This is to improve our AI algorithm, of course, so that we make better and better analysis of the data. So the new option for the doctors are an objective test that can show the deviations in the brainstem for different type of mental illness, but also, of course, for the healthy. So if you have a typical healthy curve, then you shouldn't maybe be prioritized in the system. It's better to prioritize the ones that have the deviations for different mental illnesses. So what we want to help them with is, of course, to give them an objective test that is cost-effective, very fast and reliable. This will make it possible for the help of the patient very swift and soon, and reduce the cost of mental illness as a whole for society and, of course, for the health sector and, of course, also for the patient. Why have we the assessment form as well. Well, we think that since this is a standard in almost all assessment of the patient and diagnoses, they do assessment forms. We want to include that mostly for the doctor's recognition that they are used to having this. And this is normally in paper way today, so therefore we have included it as in the digital way. But it's also a security for us to see that we are setting the right diagnoses. So, faster, more reliable, more cost-effective, may also detect the medication effects, which is a huge market. And every time we do an analysis, it's the same result, which is the objective way. You cannot influence this as a patient. You can sleep, you can be awake, it doesn't matter, you get the same result. So, the business model for this is quite simple. We don't sell BERA systems. We take a small fee for every test. And we set out the BERA system to the clinics if they sign up for about 600 tests at least a year. Of course, we also have some disposable items and services that we can provide. Mostly this is the distributor making money from this part. And we also have systems that can be used in further research, which is for us quite important because we, of course, want to find more usable waste for the BERA system. And remember that the market, 450 million people are suffering at any time from some kind of mental illness. We have concentrated on ADHD, autism and schizophrenia in this first part. This represents about 0.08%, which is a very small number, but it adds up to quite a lot of money if we do about 3 tests per patient. So, what is the revenue? Well, as I said, we set out a machine to the clinic if they sign up for about 600 tests a year. The average income from every test is about $100 to $200 US. Why so wide spectra? Well, it depends, of course, on where in the world we put the machine. It's a bit less in the third world countries and a bit higher here in the Nordic countries. For achieving a positive result for SensoDetect, we estimated that we need about 20 machines put on the market to make a positive result in the next year. Someone always asks, how many tests can you do with the BERA system? Well, in theory, about 17,000. If you are even close to this, I would suggest that you use more than one. This is if you use it all around the clock every day, 24 hours, 7 days a week. But the average we expect to be around 1,200 tests a year. This is how we will intend to go to market. We will start with the tests of ADHD, schizophrenia and autism, as I said. We will start in Bolivia, where we have a distributor that is very keen on getting started, so therefore we are starting there. We also have assignments in UK, here in the Nordics, South Korea, and we are also looking at the German market. And it's only tests for the diagnosis aid at this time. In the next step, we will expand, of course, to other countries, but also add some more of the diagnosis, hopefully, as soon as possible for depression, OCD and ADD, where we have markers already that we need to find out if they are good enough to release in the next phase. And also add the medical test, which is quite an interesting market for the BERA system. And then further expansion 2024 to other countries and also hopefully to North America. As I said, the market for this, as I presented, is around 300 million people, and there is quite a difference between how many in the staff you find in psychology and the mental illness market. And the need is quite high in all countries. The evidence for this system, we have a test done or study done in Uppsala University a couple of years ago showing that we have a very high sensitivity and specificity, above 80% on this system. We of course have our own studies also concluding that we can sort out and help the doctor with assessments with very high sensitivity and specificity. We of course have protected this system, so we have an IP in most countries, most major markets. And to summarize, I would like to show you a video, very short. And let's see if it works like this. Yeah.
It's more common than you might think, and 1 in 5 suffers from a mental illness during their lifetime. The impact on patients and near ones is profound, and the cost to society are tremendous. SensoDetect provides a solution to these challenges. Different diagnoses of mental illness are related to different parts of the brainstem. The patented BiraStock technology stimulates brainstem response by presenting click sounds through headphones, while registering the data via electrodes. The data is translated into a detailed so-called ABR curve. The patient's curve is then compared and analyzed to indicate the likely diagnosis, if any. This information will complement existing tools during assessment by a doctor. Our technology is proven by research. A blind study at Uppsala University Hospital has concluded that the ABR profiling test discriminated schizophrenia and ADHD versus healthy controls with high sensitivity and specificity. BiraStock technology is an aid to help the doctor improve the objectivity and efficiency of setting the diagnosis. This reduces the lead times in the healthcare system and the cost to society as a whole. But first and foremost, it improves the lives of people suffering from mental illness.
Very brief summary, and here is the summary for the presentation today. As I said before, we will do a market introduction next year. We will focus on Bolivia, UK and Sweden. We will receive a positive result according to plan 2020. If we launch as planned, maybe we can do it a bit faster, but this is the plan we have communicated before. We are ready with the system. We are doing a validation for the new BiraStock 3.1 in Bolivia and Ukraine and here in Sweden. Our engine, our algorithm is of course always updating, making it even better and better. And the reporting system will be also included with the assessment form, which is quite new. The next step is the treatment check, as I said, to see the effect of the medication, which is a huge market as well, parallel to the diagnosis. So that was my presentation. If you'd like to follow information from us, please look at our website or check in with our stock market spotlight. So, SensoDetect, working with improving the lives of people with mental illness. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Very interesting presentation. You mentioned 600 tests per year is what you will demand for putting out one of your units for free in a clinic. Sounds like it should be a no-brainer for the clinics to do that, actually, to take that deal.
Yeah.
But
it's very low.
It's very low, yeah. What are the main thresholds that you can foresee in as far as boosting the market uptake when you launch? What are the main challenges, so to speak?
Well, the challenge is, of course, that this market of mental illness and psychology, they don't use technology very much. In neurology, it's very common to use technology. In the psychology area, not so much. But we are seeing that more and more they are using technology and also, of course, open to new ways to improve and speed up the process, because they are struggling with long queues all over the world and have a huge problem with not being able to handle all patients.
And the issue of mental health issues or mental illness is a growing problem. That's the trend is showing. But I was curious about the markets you've chosen to enter first. Bolivia, UK and Sweden, quite disparate if you ask me.
Yeah.
What's the strategy behind that?
Don't forget that we also are looking for South Korea, so that we are really in the wide spectrum. Well, when I started 2 years ago with SensoDetect, we got a message from one of the distributors in Latin America and South America, which is based in Bolivia. And they were so keen on this product, and I thought, okay, let's see, what do you have and what is the situation in Bolivia? And they are quite advanced in, so to say, they get their medical degree often in the European countries. So they are quite advanced, but they have very few people in this sector. So they want the technology to expand and to advance and to help the citizens of Bolivia. And also the distributor sees the potential, of course, to the whole market. So therefore we are in Bolivia. Otherwise it would be very strange to start in Bolivia.
Yeah. And as far as Sweden goes, are you working with certain key opinion leaders to break the way, so to speak?
We have some in our own board, of course, and also we are picking out some clinics that we are going to work with in the launch. Which we haven't told the market yet, so I'm sorry I can't mention them here, but we will of course try as soon as we can launch the system also.
And as far as the business model goes, what about reimbursement? Is that going to be an issue in different markets, or?
You mean from the society and the healthcare system? That is quite different in different countries. And therefore we are actually doing different in different countries, of course. So it's impossible to answer that with a short question, but of course everybody wants to keep down the costs. Because this is a huge problem. And the problem is also that even if you get a diagnosis as a patient, they tend to not really believe the diagnosis and go to the next doctor and try to get a reassessment. And they can do that several times, since there is no paper to show them. If you break your arm, you can show them a picture of the arm. Here you cannot show them any pictures because it's a subjective, even though very accurate assessment, but still the doctor wants something to show the patient, so that patient can feel safe to take the treatment. So there is a huge advantage to have something to show them.
We're going to open up for, is there any questions in the audience? Anyone wants to like to pose a question? Please go ahead.
How about the study? What are the real facts behind the effectiveness of BERA?
The Uppsala University study concluded 83.7%, I think, above 80%, which is quite much higher than, for example, assessment forms, which average around 70%. But the important thing is that in that study they also concluded that we didn't point out anyone that is healthy as sick. So we can point out 85 out of 100 roughly that is sick, but we won't point out anyone that is healthy as sick, which is quite important.
How big was the study?
A couple of hundred.
I have a question. Is it possible to only use the machine to detect mental illnesses, or do you need to do the test as well, the other test?
This is a good question and a very common question, because that will of course be very interesting to have a machine that sets a diagnosis. But as you probably know, there is no machine in the world that sets diagnoses for any illness. That's the doctor's job. It could be a help, like when you do an X-ray or something like that, but it won't set the diagnosis for you. That's the doctor's job. But it will be an aid for him or her to set a diagnosis easier.
Well, as the development continues, who knows? There might be a robot doing that as well. Thank you very much, Johan, for the presentation. I think we should give him a warm hand.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
From mental illness to other issues with the brain, or the head at least, and also something that could be common these times of the year, if you have a blocked nose, which I do today. We are going to hear from Chordate Medical. Anders Weiland is going to present. Welcome, Anders.
Thank you very much. And good morning. All right, let's see if we can get the slide up. I'm going to tell you about this exciting product and project, Chordate, with roots at Karolinska Institute, an invention a few years ago. And now we are in commercialization. How are we doing on the slide stack? All right.
Some technical problems here.
Yes.
Let's see.
So I can continue for you here and the audience. Maybe we go back, I don't know. But this company's share is listed on NGM, MTF list. It was listed about a year ago and a half. All right, so here we go. Yes. This company is a pioneer in neuromodulation by kinetic oscillation, which is different from electrical stimulation. That is the more normal technology that we know about. We really solve problems in two areas. The first one, which is non-allergic rhinitis, or blocked nose or stuffy nose. But we also have an opportunity around the corner where we are in the midst of a major clinical study for treatment of chronic migraine. And I'm going to explain these two. What they have in common is that the central nervous system and first and foremost the autonomic nervous system has a deep impact on how these two conditions behave. So the treatment is called kinetic oscillation stimulation, or COS for short. And the part where we actually are selling is the non-allergic rhinitis. This is a CE-marked procedure, and we are active in 8 markets with that. We touch there about 100 million people in the world. For the chronic migraine, it's a severe condition that hits about 150 million people in the world. And this treatment is prophylactic, so you actually can mediate the situation before it actually occurs. It's all built on a proven effect. And the most important proof of this is this study published 2017, where it's demonstrated that we have a profound effect on the modulation of the heart rate variability. So we stimulate in the nose, but we can steer how the heart rate is variable. Therefore, we can conclude that we have a direct connection between the neural system, the autonomic nervous system in the nose, and what actually goes out in the central nervous system. So just a brief look at the industry as such and the current market, but also how we have designed our business case. Neuromodulation is very hot, basically. It's growing drastically, and you can see that a lot of the portal players in the world are involved in this and investing in this. This is compounded of course, what we usually know, the brain stimulation, electrodes, pacemaker for the brains, different type of pacemakers, but also external stimulation, TNS and other things, mostly electrical stimulation. But it doesn't really matter how you stimulate the neural system as long as you do it. And this is basically what this invention is built upon. But it's important to know that we're not alone in betting on the neuromodulation market's growth. There are some very important players doing the same thing here. Now, this is the simple design of our business case. And what we are out to do is basically to generate and demonstrate shareholders' value. And the way we build our shareholders' value is in a top-down approach on the left and the bottom-up real-world approach on the right. We know that in order for us to get an affirmed value from some outside view, we need to demonstrate 3 different things that are very important. Of course, medtech needs to be founded on an IPR portfolio that's substantial. And this company has 51 patents in 9 families around the globe. The other thing you need is a sound scientific evidence base, of course. We have 5 published studies so far, and we are in the midst of running 2 major clinical studies. Both of them are multi-center. And in the middle, you need to generate a proof of concept to demonstrate that you actually can sell this and actually can reach a market and get your price that you are asking. This we do by a bottom-up approach. We actually start by making sure that we can have patient engagement, that this is important for people, in this case with the rhinitis problem or the stuffed nose. This is demonstrated in a business-to-consumer project in Sweden, where we actually have got Swedes to pay for care, which is kind of unusual. And they not only do they pay for it, but they decide that the treatment was so good, so they come back and pay again. And there I got my proof that I need to know that people owning the nose and owning the problem actually put the value on that problem and come back and repay. This is very important from a business perspective. This have led us to engage private healthcare providers in Sweden. We have, to this date, signed up 3 private franchise clinics that do this procedure in Sweden. We know that this will spill over to the public healthcare provision, and with the push from these 2 sides as well as the patient side, we know that we can probably have a better chance of gaining this very important reimbursement decisions from counties in Sweden or healthcare insurance companies elsewhere and so forth. This together comprise the proof of concept that we need to demonstrate that this is sellable. So that is the very simple design of the business case, and it is meant to build and demonstrate shareholders' value for our shareholders. Now, getting into the medicine here a little bit, where I would like to start with the chronic migraine, because that's a very exciting area. And yeah, of course, the migraine as such is, as you can see, a very sharp and defined market. Chronic migraine is not the episodic migraine that happens once in a while. We don't treat acute migraine. This is not a treatment for the acute situation. This is a prophylactic treatment that is aimed to reduce the number of headache days you have. The prevalence, according to literature, is around 150 million people in the world. But it's also very well known that this is extremely costly to society. In Europe alone, this costs 100 billion euros per year in absenteeism, presenteeism equals loss of production, basically, or productivity. There's a lot of drugs consumed to mediate migraine situation, and right now the projection for 2026 is about 6.7 billion euros. 7.6 billion euros at a growth rate of 10%. So a lot of pills are consumed to mediate migraine. I should go back. This is kind of our funny way of explaining what is the big opportunity here. This is hypothetical, but if we treat everyone with our treatment in the world to the price we're asking, this is our hypothetical opportunity for revenue. That's never going to happen, of course, but just to give you the scope of the problem, it's quite high. Where are we then in chronic migraine? Well, yes, as I said, we are in scientific evidence generation. We run a multi-center study in Germany in 4 headache clinics, university clinics. The size of this study is 140 patients, and they are given either active treatment or placebo, or sham treatment, 50-50%. We expect to see the last patient to go out from this study at the peak of the summer, and we anticipate to be able to publish the results mid next fall. The primary endpoint here is very simple. We just like to see that we have a significant reduction of number of headache days. And of course, this whole investment that we're doing, that's substantial for us, is to prove that this treatment is clinically relevant and therefore render us a CE mark, which is important to commence sales. Let's see here. Let's talk about rhinitis, or the stuffed nose. Again, my quote-unquote total addressable opportunity, which again is never going to happen, but it's a nice figure, 4 billion euros if we sell to everyone that the literature says has this condition to the price that we're asking. It's huge, of course. So the way we position this treatment is in a huge space between what's usually recommended, which are regular nasal sprays or decongestive sprays, and they are used and should maybe be used for what was referred to earlier, a common cold or something like this, to alleviate the stuffed nose. So this is basically what the physicians can recommend their patients to do. You can try this or that spray. These sprays are labeled for maybe 14 days of use, and we meet patients every day that have been on these sprays daily for years and years and years, which is not a good thing. That in itself probably causes a stuffed nose just by that. If the situation is very severe, there are a number of various surgical procedures that can be recommended, including radiofrequency ablation and burning with laser and carving with knives and stuff like this. But very few get submitted to that kind of procedure. So in between here, the patient is basically on their own. And this is the gap that we like to fill. And the recent study that was, well, recent, but the last study that was made with our procedure of 300 patients demonstrated that 55% of the subjects got a significantly improved condition lasting for over 6 months after 2 treatments. So this is also long term. If we break down the market here, literature has it that about 200 million people of the world has non-allergic, non-infectious rhinitis. So we take away the infectious rhinitis, bacteria and viruses, we take away the allergic rhinitis from allergens, and left over would be the non-allergic rhinitis. That's how they usually label this. 200 million people. From there we can carve off senile runny nose rhinitis, gustatory rhinitis from strong food and spices and such, port wine, what have you. Hormonal rhinitis, mostly during pregnancy's first 3 months. And then actually common drugs, headache pills and so forth, they also are labeled to induce rhinitis. It's not so much known. What's left here is the idiopathic rhinitis portion. That's the 100 million people. That means rhinitis without any known cause or explanation. That is our target. So we go ahead with our 100 million people. Quick look at the product system. There's a central component here, which is a computer that runs the procedure. it pumps up that single-use balloon catheter, and it also controls our business model, because this one is charged with electronic codes that you have to punch in. So if you don't have any codes purchased, the machine won't work. So we control the number of usage in a pay-per-use system. So you have to buy these codes in order to make the machine work. The catheters are basically sent for free together with the codes that you purchase. So that's actually a control of that, and it's actually also a way for us to stop any copying of our products. And then there is a headband to affix the catheter in the correct position during the procedure. And the procedure is 10 minutes in each nostril. So it's a very short procedure. Usually recommended to be repeated twice with 30-day spacing. We can take a quick look at how this works and what you're supposed to do with a patient. You have the catheter, usually with some air in it, so you have to squeeze out the air so you get it as small as possible. Inside there is also a steering and guiding catheter, an inner catheter. We need some lubrication, and you need to find the patient and the patient's nose. And then this is very, very simple to an ENT doctor. The only thing you have to watch is to place it on the floor of the nose in the lower turbinate. And the only thing you can do really wrong here is to think that the nose is going upwards, which is not. It's really 90 degrees into the head. So that's not the place to place it. When it's there, the machine will pump it up to a certain pressure, and then the vibration of this will start with a very low frequency of 60 to 70 hertz. Where we are here is that we are in recurrent sales. We have our 8 markets. We're going to take a look at those in a few moments. But we are building a more reinforced scientific base. So we run now a multi-center international study on 14 university clinics in Europe in 5 countries. 300 patients, 50-50 randomization. And this is a long-term 12-month follow-up, so we expect this study to be done at the peak of 2020 and the results a quarter later. The primary endpoint here is to demonstrate significant reduction of the symptoms at the 3-month mark. And the reason why we're doing this is to build a solid evidence base so that we can argue well in the reimbursement discussion with different reimbursement authorities. The go-to-market model we have employed for the rhinitis part, which will also be followed eventually by how we sell the migraine. Basically 3 ways. 2 normal ways and then 1 extra. The traditional sales business to business, where we have distributors, yes, we do deploy that in most of these few countries that we focus on. But we've also tried and succeeded with a disruptive business to consumer model, where we actually use Facebook and Google AdWords and actually also radio commercials to generate a flow of patients to our franchise clinics. And then we have contracts with these franchise clinics that they take care of that patient flow, and then they pay us a certain fee for that. So that is our business model, and that's only here in Sweden. High level of engagement. We see a fantastic response from people on Facebook, a lot of sharing and commenting and concern for others. So this is really a nice model, and many of our distributors have taken a huge interest in this and studied this to see if this is also applicable in other countries, which we believe it is. And then we have a third one. The way we handled our 8 Chinese patents was that we realized that, well, it's going to take too long for us to get to China ourselves. That's not going to happen. So we immediately set out to find a partner that has invested $1.5 million in the registration process. We've set up a joint venture company in Shanghai, which they manage. We are not involved at all, or not a lot. And right now, we are in product registration in China, acting as a Chinese company. That shortens the registration process with about half. So now we expect to be ready for sales here within 3 years. The normal situation for a foreigner coming into China is maybe 6 to 8 years to get registration. So we are Chinese in China, thanks to our good friends at Nanos Medical. It's also worth to mention that the Medtronic Sequoia Fund is a huge owner of Nanos. And you remember Medtronic from the first slide. Another big owner here is Health 100 with 300 clinics in China. That's the biggest private chain of clinics in China. The NAR market that we operate in these 8 countries gives us a potential volume of 2.5 million presumptive patients. We know from our study, the last study, we have a 55% efficacy. Times whatever price we can ask, that will generate our potential in the 8 small markets that we operate. And that's a relatively nice figure for us. So if we can do a good fraction of that, we're basically home. Finally, a little bit of slide of financing. I mean, this is a sort of a startup company. We are constantly needing capital until the point where we go through break-even and can generate our own. And that's a little bit left to do before we reach that point. Not too far, though. So currently, we rely on our very good major owners and also new incoming major owners that we have constant discussions with. And from time to time, we also do right issues on the stock market. So these is our 2 sources of capital. And basically that was my 15 minutes and then some. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anders. Sorry about the glitch in the beginning with your presentation. Super interesting. Every time I see one of these really kind of groundbreaking medtech devices or treatment methods, what I always ask myself, what's the big selling point here for the patient, so to speak? You mentioned I'm myself on the nose spray like 15 days out of 30 in the month, so I would like to get out of that. But what's the biggest
Is that around the year, or?
It's starting to become like that. Yeah. So, what's your biggest selling point to me?
You are an addict.
I'm probably.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, well, that's the selling point.
Yeah.
To get rid of that.
Does the treatment hurt?
No, it's. I've done this myself several times, and I talked to many patients. It is uncomfortable to get things up your nose, basically. It takes you 3-5 seconds to get used to it. We have patients basically falling asleep on the second treatment because it's kind of a nice humming sound for your brain, and it's very relaxing.
So it's the exact opposite of going to the dentist.
Absolutely, I would say so. With a few exceptions, of course, but no, it doesn't really hurt. No.
So you showed us there the potential market for you and market share that you hope to obtain. And what about the pricing levels here? What are you looking at?
I mean, this is price-wise, it's not a new thing to prescribe treatments for this condition. If we talk only about rhinitis now, so these surgical procedures are very costly, and that gives us a good reference span. Of course, telling someone to go to a gas station and buy your sprays, it's not a cost to anyone, basically, other than the patient. Even though when you stack up your bottles that you buy through a year, it's quite a bit of money, actually. And many calculate that, well, this is cheaper than what I spend on sprays. So maybe that's true. But we take reference from these prescription codes, the insurance codes that are from the lower end of the surgical procedures, and that gives us a very good span. I can mention that because it's public that, for instance, in the UK, where we have 3 insurance companies issuing codes for this treatment, it is around £350, which is a good ticket for us.
Okay, yeah. And also in the beginning you showed a picture where you said, because this is not an area, there's an area with a lot of interest from quite big players as well. Is there any partnership strategy in the background there that you are pursuing?
Well, I spent all my adult years and some extra years in medtech, and whatever faculty you come into, and I've been in surgery, and I've been in imaging, and I've been, I mean, these are relatively small markets. It's not a huge auditorium of contact points at these companies. So to continue discussions with interesting industry colleagues, if you wish, it's not a big task, basically. It's quite orderly organized in medtech. So we'll see what happens, all right?
Yeah. We have time for a question from the audience. Does anyone want to ask anything? Yeah.
Talking about protection and of your rights and so on,
Yes.
and this product against competitors, especially when you have a joint venture down in China. Could you elaborate a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, the beauty with handheld or mechanical physical medtech is that it basically falls right into what is relatively easy to patent, because it's a pronounced technology. You can patent technical aspects of that. Compare that to try to patent an algorithm of some sort. You have 101 ways of doing the same calculation. So our patents are deemed from other evaluators to be extremely strong and provides a very good protection for what we do. And the company did a good work early on to make sure to cover most important aspects of how to narrow in on this technology. And as the mechanical vibration or the kinetic oscillation as such is quite a novel idea of treating or producing this effect on the nervous system, it's a really good stack of patents, I must say, compared to others I've seen. So we rely relatively safely on that. Of course, patents in China, as you know, is debated, but that situation is improving day by day, basically.
So that's about all the time we have right now. But my final question is, of course, then where should I go to sign up for the treatment for myself?
You can in Sweden you can search for Andas som vanligt .se.
That's something to wish for.
Yeah, and then you book your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next up we're going to talk a bit about bones, or actually Bonesupport. We have Emil Billback here, who is CEO of Bonesupport, which is based in Lund. Welcome, Emil.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm here today to present Bonesupport. Bonesupport is an orthobiologics company, a Swedish orthobiologics company, and we have a unique bioceramic product platform for treatment of bone voids. So a bit short about the company, possibly. The company origins from clinical research made by Professor Lars Lidgren at the University Hospital of Lund, and he has done significant research on bone healing. And the patents and the research from this has given birth to Bonesupport. We are 75 people employed, and we operate in a majority of the European markets, as well as in the US, which is our biggest sales market. We have so far 3 products commercialized, and these products are validated by more than 130 peer-to-peer review clinical abstracts and publications. Last year we had sales of about 130 million Swedish krona. So talking about Bonesupport and what is it that we do, I think we start by looking at what is the problem that we solve. Well, as you know, the bone in the human body has a fantastic ability to heal itself. But there are several occasions where that healing doesn't work. One of these occasions is if there's a severe trauma. Think traffic accident, for example. Then you have a fracture of a bone, and if the ends of the bones do not meet due to the injury, then there is a bone gap, there's a bone void. And this prevents the bone from actually completing its healing cycle. Now this can occur in trauma, it can occur in revision arthroplasty, which basically is a replacement of a hip or a knee prosthesis, if there is an infection present or if there is a tumor. A bone void cannot be left unattended. It needs to be treated. Otherwise you have mechanical instability, and a bone void can also lead to much more severe indications. So how common is a bone void? There are about 3.8 million procedures each year treating bone voids. Bonesupport is focusing on a subsegment of this market. We are targeting 650,000 procedures a year. This is my pointer. We're targeting 650,000 procedures a year. Now, our technology most likely is applicable on the total market of 3.8, but we are focusing on the area where we have today clinical evidence and clinical studies showing the efficacy and safety of the product. The 650,000 procedures make up about 580 million US dollars of sales annually. And this is how this is split. If we look at the European market, for example, the blue pie in this pie chart is autograft. Autograft means that to treat the bone void, the surgeon will open up the skin at the hip bone, carve out bone tissue, which then is put into the bone void to heal it. And this normally works very well because it's your own bone tissue, so it's well accepted by the body. But in about 1 out of 5 procedures, it leads to complications. Whenever you have another surgery, whenever you open up the skin barrier, there's a risk for infection. Another issue is that up to 40% of the patients that have bone tissue taken from the hip experience pain up to 2 years after the surgery. So ironically, the fracture itself might heal and the patient is fine, but has constant pain from the hip bone, which is the donor site where the bone tissue was taken from. The red part of the diagram shows allograft, and allograft is bone tissue taken from another donor, usually from a dead person, from a bone bank. There are some risks with using allograft, and there are some thoughts that using bone from other individuals could also be transmitting diseases. So there are some doubts on this treatment. DBM, the pink part, is the same as allograft, but more processed. And this is a big treatment in the US due to the reimbursement rule there. And then finally, the purple part of this pie chart is the synthetic bone graft. And this is where you would find our product, Cerament. So what is it that we offer then? Our product, Cerament, is a synthetic bone graft substitute. It is injectable, so it's minimally invasive, and it has the same composition as your own bone. So when you inject it into the bone void, it stabilizes the bone void, and after 6 to 12 months, it has been completely resorbed and replaced with your own living healthy bone. Now this would, in our view, in our vision, replace the need to harvest bone from the patient's own hip One of the biggest challenges for an orthopedic surgeon is if there's an infection present. That is why two of our products, CERAMENT G and CERAMENT V, are eluting antibiotic substance, so either gentamicin or vancomycin. So this way you can heal the bone void, you can treat the bone void, and you can prevent the infection or treat the infection all in one procedure, versus historically this took place over several procedures. So how are we performing then? This chart shows our sales over time. On this axis you have million Swedish krona, and on this axis you see each quarter since beginning of 2014. And the sales number here is last 12 months, so it's in 12 months increment. The light blue part of the bar is North America, and the dark blue is Europe and rest of the world. And what you can see is a very strong and steady sales growth. And it shows you that CERAMENT is a technology, is a product that is very well accepted, an increasing amount of loyal users. In the US, in North America, we are operating through Zimmer Biomet, one of the biggest orthopedic companies in the industry. And during last year, Zimmer Biomet had quite some internal issues, quite some internal challenges. And they couldn't keep up with the demand from their customers on CERAMENT, and this was visible in our sales line. So we started a strategic review in springtime, and we came with the conclusion that for CERAMENT and Bonesupport to reach its full potential, we need to have a strong commercial platform in the US, which is the biggest market in the world for these products. And that led us to terminate the distribution agreement and replace Zimmer Biomet with a network of independent distributors that will have a much broader reach to the market opportunity than what Zimmer Biomet could have. This inevitably, of course, leads to a temporary sales dip, but we are convinced that this move will take us on strong sales growth going forward. The details of our strategic review could be found on our website, so you can download the full presentation there. You can also see the entire video uptake from the presentations, where we're giving all the details behind our considerations and our decisions for the strategy. But in short, our strategy rests on three pillars. Innovation, clearly that's in our DNA, that's where we come from. We are the most innovative product in the orthopedic market today. To have leading clinical and health economic data to validate our benefits. This is important both for the surgeons that we're talking to as well as the payers. And finally, to have an effective commercial platform. I will talk about the two latter pillars now, and very recently we had some positive news from one of our clinical studies, and that's what I will show you now. Since autograft, remember taking hip bone to heal a bone void, is the golden standard. Bonesupport decided 5 years ago to set out on a study to prove that CERAMENT could replace autograft. This study started in 2013. It has enrolled close to 140 patients over 20 trauma centers in Germany. And these patients had a tibia plateau fracture. And that means a fracture in the tibia just below the knee. Just below the knee, where the tibia meets the knee joint. And the patients were looked at from a number of different parameters. And last week, on Monday, came the first results. And I'm very happy and pleased that indeed the top-line data shows that CERAMENT is as good as autograft. Now that leads me to a few different conclusions. One, CERAMENT is the only product of its kind that has such a level 1 clinical data with statistical significance. Number 2, this gives us an opportunity to replace autograft in those kind of injuries. And there are no less than 25,000 procedures per year in the top 5 European markets where autograft is used for exactly the tibia fracture that I mentioned before. So we see, of course, an enormous opportunity now that after all these years we have this clinical study showing positive effect. And even more so, this study will in the full length be published in the first quarter of next year. So we will submit to a scientific journal in January. And we believe that the results from this study will be able to change standard of care so that there will be less autograft used in the future and more synthetic product like CERAMENT. So before I mention how important it is for Bonesupport to have a strong commercial platform, and I also mentioned that we have terminated the agreement with Zimmer Biomet and replaced it with independent distributors, I'm pleased to say that from October 22nd, we went live with a setup, with a network of no less than 25 independent distributors that covers much more of the market opportunity in the US. Zimmer Biomet covered approximately 1/3 of the market. But our new setup, with 25 distributors, they have access to more than 500 sales reps. We reach much broader in the US market. So we have spent the last couple of months in training and educating the salespeople. As a comparison, Zimmer Biomet had about 300 sales reps present in the US market, and now we have more than 500. So you can see this is a move of strength, and this is a move for a more offensive future. So I would like to conclude my presentation, and what I've shared with you today is that Bonesupport in 2018 have made some major steps to secure that we reach the ultimate potential of our technology. We have created a much stronger commercial platform in the US. In addition to that, in Europe, in the countries where we have direct sales presence, which is the Nordics, Germany, UK and Switzerland, we have close to doubled our sales force, displaying the strong trust that we have in our technology. In addition to this, we will reach the full potential by gaining further share from autograft, but also from gaining shares from other bone graft substitutes that do not have the strong clinical evidence that we do. And we do that on the basis on the CERTiFy study that I presented to you before. And we know from previous clinical studies that with autograft, up to 40% of the patients have pain that lasts for up to 2 years afterwards. But hopefully with this clinical study, there will be an end to that. And finally, we're building a market segment of prophylaxis for those patients that have a high risk for infection, like a trauma, a severe trauma. And we do that with our CERAMENT G and our CERAMENT V product that are eluting antibiotics. In 2020, we will deliver another really big clinical study, which we call Fortify. This study looks at CERAMENT G with trauma patients and an open fracture. It means that your bone has penetrated the skin barrier. There's a high risk of infection. And this study, we hope, will pave the way for getting CERAMENT G registered in the US, which is, of course, a very big market opportunity for us. What does this mean then? Well, 2018 will be a transition year for us. We're making a lot of big decisions and a lot of big changes. that we believe will strategically better equip us for the future. In 2019, we expect a significant sales growth as we are getting all the salespeople in the US up and running and getting a direct access to our customers and target group. After 2019, we predict that we will grow sales with 40% per year. And we are well funded. We have cash that will last us well to execute on our strategy. So exciting times ahead. I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, and I hope also that you feel that Bonesupport is a company to keep an eye on. We have, in the near-term and mid-term future, a significant amount of events that will bring inflection points on this journey and that will help us to realize the full potential of CERAMENT. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Emil.
Thank you.
Okay, so really interesting development. Looking at the recent results, then that you say you presented good results. You can show that it's equivalent, but without the complicated surgery that you have to do. So if this would then affect the standard of care for this kind of what do you call it? Procedure. Yeah. What would that mean for you in the mid to long term, basically?
Well, it would of course mean that our current sales base would increase significantly. Today, if you look in Europe, there's 1/3 of all the procedures where you have a bone void. Out of this 650, that autograft is still used. I believe that's because it's a proven method, and I also believe that it comes down to tradition. You do what you've always have done.
Yeah.
I've met many surgeons who says, well, it works well for me until there are some clinical evidence to show something else. And that's the point we have arrived at right now.
Yeah.
So what we will do is we will show these results at several congresses, and our sales force will also be equipped with presentations and abstracts from this study to spread the gospel that there is no longer the need to expose the patient to the discomfort, the pain, the extra surgery that is required to harvest bone from the hip.
And then again, fighting tradition can be a really uphill battle. So, are you working with specific key opinion leaders in different markets in order to spread the gospel, as you say? Or will it only be your own sales force doing that work?
Well, the study was done in 20 trauma centers in Germany. And these are some of the most renowned trauma centers that there is. Of course, these physicians that have led the investigation and the study, they have seen the results with their own eyes. And I met them at a recent event, and the response and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. So I also expect that all the people that have been part of this study also participate actually in spreading now the communication that there is a new and more progressive alternative.
They will be part of your sales force unknowingly. But then again, making this strategic decision to basically terminate your current distribution platform in the US, which is such a big market, that's actually quite a ballsy move, because you were making money there. But when you expect that move to pay out fully, because it's a huge investment, of course.
It is. I've done this before, so I lived also and worked in the US before. And whenever you do such a bold move, there's naturally a disruption. And that's what we're seeing now, and that's what was on my graph. You ask me, when will we see the positive benefits of it? Immediately. Because there were always physicians that saw CERAMENT at conventions or congresses, and they called to head office and said, we would like to learn more about this product. But if they were not a customer of Zimmer Biomet, there was not so high likelihood that they actually got that information.
Okay.
Now we have a much more direct access to our physicians and the surgeons that want to use the product. So I expect that there will be immediate benefits from that. Then if your question is how long will it take before we're back on the same sales level, I couldn't tell.
Okay.
But I have great confidence that this is the right move.
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes? What, please?
2 questions, Emil. First, at what point in sales, your sales, will you achieve break-even given the change in the strategy? That's the first question. And the other, how does the industry at large handle the duplication, the vast duplication of efforts, especially on the marketing and sales side? i.e., how do you see the landscape shaping up? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. The first part of that question I unfortunately cannot answer because we do not give guidance and forecast. So I apologize for that, but that day will come, be sure. The other part is how does the industry cope with the duplication of effort? I agree that's a bit troublesome because there's a lot of noise out in the market, and this industry is shaped by a few really big orthopedic companies with big sales forces. And what we have noticed is that it takes time to establish new procedures. And that's why Bonesupport has taken the bold move to invest in clinical studies that really shows the efficacy of the product. Then it's not just us and our salespeople, but it's actually proven to have a certain effect. And we have found that companies that have that level of clinical data have a much faster market penetration. And that's also what we can see if we compare our sales to other companies with same size. Thank you.
So you mentioned then in 2019 you have, in short term, you have lots of inflection points and interesting milestones. Which one are you looking forward to the most personally?
I look forward very much now to see the Certify study published so that we have the full readout. The other part that I look forward to is in the beginning of 2019, we are confident to present health economic data because we believe that having a product like this with the benefits, it will also show great effects on lowering healthcare cost for these kind of treatments. Shorter hospital stay, for example.
We're looking forward to that.
Me too.
For sure. Thank you very much, Emil.
Thank you.
So, we are moving forward in the program. The next speaker has actually been a guest at BioStock Live not too long ago, so it's going to be interesting to hear what Lars-Erik Eriksson of CLS has to say today. Welcome, Lars-Erik.
Thank you very much. And good morning. Well, CLS, as we said before, is a company that have existed some time now, from 2006. We were noted on the stock exchange in 2009, and it was based on a research in Lund University from a professor who started the company together with me in 2006. And we have today our headquarters in Lund, but also offices in Germany and in USA. And it was based on the first step that we took. It is a method that is called IMILT, a method that I will go in further on what it is. It is generating an antigen that triggers the immune defense, and it gives us a possibility to treat the tumors that we are doing through the laser. The system itself is called Tramby, and it's a thermal therapy system. We use fibers and lasers to treat the tumors. I will come back to that situation. And the new step for us is that we have now also the possibilities to treat thermal therapy solutions with image-guided ablation. And this means that it's only to ablate, to take away the tumor. We do not generate any immune defense in this case. What we are doing here is that we are able to give the clinicians a very good system, and easy to use, and have a very high precision. For the patient, it's a gentle system, and it's very efficient. And for the hospital, of course, it's a lower cost, and also for the world, it's a possibility to have a good health economy. The product itself is the same if we use IMILT or if we use the image-guided area. It's a laser unit. It's a fiber that we put into the tumor. And we have two types of fibers. One is what we call a diffuser fiber, and the other one is a radial fiber. The diffuser fiber is a fiber that we have developed ourselves through buying a German company. And this is an area that have given us the possibilities to treat bigger tumors, because that's always a problem itself. We have a CE mark. We have a 510K clearance, which means we can sell in USA, which we are doing, and we can sell in Europe with this situation. So we are quite fortunate in this area. If we look at what we need to do now, is clearly that when it comes to the workflow for the clinician, it's very important that it's not 5 different companies that is delivering the material. We have the ambition to see to that we come into a situation where we will deliver one part, and the big company like Siemens will deliver the other part, which is an MR. And this means that we are missing today the one on the left side, the MR thermometric, and that is something that we will generate together with a company in France. And we hope that in the middle of 2019 we will have a full package that we can deliver to the clinic. And here you can see the possibilities to have the MR thermometry, and also our possibilities to deliver our unit and our disposables. Together with the navigation area, gives us a possibility to offer to the clinic the full package and the full range. This means that we target the tumor through an MR, which is the best probably today possibility to use this guidance. The second part is you need some type of stereotaxy, let's say a frame where you can put the fiber and exactly put the fiber where you need it into the tumor. And the third area is to deliver the energy. It means that we have a targeting, we have the instrument navigation and position, we deliver the energy, and we have the ablation in the end, which is a possibility and a needed possibility for the client, for the clinician, to see to that he has a full workflow in his clinic. It reduces the side effects, and it's also shorten the recovery time, which we have seen when we work with this. So what we are doing today is we have the Traumbay system, which we work with in the area of immune stimulation, IMILT. The second part is that we have made an agreement with IGT in France to deliver let's say a software to be able to offer the clinic the whole range. It means that the software will, together with our equipment, give the possibility to see to that the whole area is covered. The third area is that we have made an agreement with a company in USA called MRI. They are very active in neuro and in spine. And this is something that we will do together with them. We will go into a new area, which is a neuro and spine area, and we hope that this will be launched during 2020, because that has a development area in itself. MRI is a company that is quite good in the area of neuro. They are strong there, but they have a stereotaxy, and we will deliver the treatment for the stereotaxy. So that together we will be a strong partner in this area. And the fourth thing is an agreement that we have made, an MOU, with Exact Imaging. Exact Imaging is the alternative to MRI. Because in MR you can see very well the position of the tumor. But in ultrasound generally it's quite difficult to see exact where the tumor is, and it's difficult to guide with ultrasound. So what Exact Imaging have done, they have done a special way of this type of ultrasound. It's called micro ultrasound, which has a possibility of treatment of prostate. And together with Exact, we will also offer the total possibility for the clinic to not only, as they have today, possibility to take biopsies, but also to have a full treatment, which is important. When it comes to the application, IMILT has two areas. It's pancreatic area and it's skin or malignant melanoma. In image-guided thermal ablation, which also called FLA, we have prostate, neuro and spine. This is the areas where we are active at the moment and where we want to go. If you look at IMILT, that I said before, is a main part where we started once in our life. It means that we are putting a fiber into the tumor. I don't know if this works. It does. We are putting a fiber in the tumor and heat it to 46 degrees during 30 minutes. Meanwhile, let's say it takes a week for the tumor to die. But meanwhile it's dying, it's generating an antigen that triggers the immune defense and are putting that into T cells. And T cells are programmed to, they go to the blood and they are programmed to kill the distant tumors, which is the metastasis in this case. This is a principle of what we are doing and in IMILT. And if you look at what we have done until now, we had a grant from Horizon 2020 of 2.1 million euros to finalize these studies. And we can see of the 7 patients that we have done in the pancreatic area, we have a survival of 17 months, which is quite a long time if you compare to a normal treatment that gives you a general survival time of between 6 to 9 months. And this is a very interesting case, and this is something that we now are delivering a report to the common market in the end of this month. And we hope also that this will also generate an interest for this treatment among the doctors. If you go to FLA, as I said before, it's the same type of equipment that they are using. We are using a higher temperature and we are using a shorter time. It means that the only ambition we have here is to kill the tumor, to take it away. It's used especially when it goes to prostate cancer. And we have in USA a clinic where we are working as a standard treatment for their patients in the prostate area. What we are now possible to do is that we have a technology that gives us a very easy used MR guidance. We have a small, powerful mobile laser, and we have a portfolio, as I said, of laser applications. And together with the MR thermometry, we will be able to offer the full range of what is needed in this situation. As I said before, the development with Exact Imaging is an interesting case because it gives a possibility for a urologist to be able to really handle the situation without using MR, because MR is very, very expensive and not all of them has a possibility to be able to use this MR. So the alternative is this exact view that, as I said before, is a possibility to get a much better picture of where you are and what you want to do, and also to see the possibilities of the range of the temperature. Normally this is used for biopsies also, but now we are adding a value to this possibility. We are adding a treatment value, so the clinician can use it also in his treatment, which is very important. As I said before, what we have done until now when it comes to IMILT, the immune defense is that we have made studies in the pancreatic area. We have made it in Marseille and in Porto, and we have made breast cancer in Nottingham. And as I said before, the result of this have been very positive, and that's something that we are very proud of. Even if in breast cancer you have to be aware of that today's use and today's possibility to treat breast cancer is quite good, and you reach almost 90% of a success when you treat breast cancer. It's of course very difficult for us to say we are as good or better as this. We have to do this in 10 years to be able to prove that. But what we have done in Nottingham is that the treated patients there have one of them had been free of cancer for 2 years now, and this proved that is very good and very positive. And the other case we have is that we are now making malignant melanoma, skin cancer, in Stockholm, in Karolinska. And what is interesting in this case is that we have a combination of their standard treatment, which is PD-1, pharma, and our method. And this combination, I believe, very much will be a possibility for us in the future. We have seen that we have a stable and usable possibility to handle our treatment method. And we have also possibilities of treat very severe diseases. And we have a patient outcome and survival that is very good for us. In this case, you can say we have totally treated around 20 patients with the new equipment, but previously we can add another 70 patients that is treated with the same type of method. Ongoing treatments, if you jump to the FLA area, that doesn't give the type of immune defense that we were talking about earlier, is that we are making a study in Toronto. And what is nice with this study is that normally you have great difficulties of having patients, because we have now for 2 years been looking for the patients, and only one place is Marseille in France, who has fulfilled their quota of the 5 patients they should do. Here you can see that they have made 12 patients until today for nearly around half a year, which is really impressive. And they will make another 4 before the end of the year. So this is a very good thing for us, where we can see how we are treating this type of early prostate cancer and what is the effect of it. We can use that when we would like to have reimbursement in this case. When it goes to commercialization, we are working in US and Canada, and we are especially working together with MRI. And as I said before, MRIs, we have made 2 agreements with MRI. And one is an agreement where we are going to make a joint development so that we can treat neuro and spine together. And the other agreement is even better, I would say. It's a possibility of a distribution agreement where we get 20 salespersons in USA at the moment to sell for us, to sell our previous products. And this is something that is very good for us in this situation. Indications in the USA and Canada is prostate, neurospine, and also, of course, IMILT. In Europe, it's more difficult because there you have not come that far with the FLA situation. So what we are doing there is we focus on focal laser ablation and IMILT, which means it's prostate. We have a sales organization in Germany, and we are now looking into the possibilities of doing a sales organization together with our partners, which are MRI and also Exact Imaging in Europe, to have a strong organization there. We are talking about prostate, pancreatic, and malignant melanoma, or skin cancer. In the rest of the world, we are now, let's say, on hold. We would like to have the portfolio ready in USA and in Europe. Once we have it, we will take the next step to go out in the world, in the rest of the world. You can know that this image-guided treatment that I'm talking about, both when it comes to MRI, when it comes to MRUs, and it comes to this micro-ultrasound, in combination with treatment, because what one did before is very much to have a possibility of not only use the treatment, but also use it as a biopsy possibility. This image-guided treatment will reach around $5.4 billion in 2024, which is a huge amount of money. So this is a very interesting area. If you look at our market, we can say that our market is estimated when it comes to IMLT, the immune defense area, initially on 1,200 million euros. And the areas that we are working with now is malignant melanoma, skin, pancreatic cancer, liver, kidney, lung and breast. These are the areas that we will work with when it comes to our immune defense. If you look at the market where you have image-guided laser ablation, this is a little smaller, but we are focusing on USA and Canada. And the area where we are working there is in prostate and neuro. So these are the areas that we are now focusing in our work today. If you look at the situation of what we want to do, our ambition for the 2018-19 is that we will build an organization of sales people in USA. This is already done by the agreement with MRI. We have 20 people working today together with us in US. We want to build an organization in Europe also, and this organization will be built together with our partners, where we can see that our portfolio is much bigger now than it was before. And our ambition was also to develop the business area, which we have done by having the software agreement with the French company IGT, and also the complete offer of MR-guided treatment. And as I said also, the fusion imaging is also important for us, where we would like to combine the biopsy that we have today with the possibility of treatment. And this is a very interesting area. If you continue then to the clinical development, we have a plan, of course, to execute a possibility in the area of IMLT. We have seen very positive effect of our studies, and we are now looking to analyze what is happening and how we want to go further on when it comes to this area. So this is a full package that I have to give you today. And we are looking forward to a future that looks quite bright for us in case of the possibility to use laser in treatment of solid cancer tumors. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars-Erik. So it would seem that you have had quite a busy time since you were with BioStock the last time. I think it was early fall you were here. What would you yourself consider to be the most important development for you at this point?
Well, we can say what happened there was that we saw we got from the clinic clear indications that what we offer them today was a fiber. That was a very good fiber, of course. But you can say that you offer one part out of four. And that means that was not so easy to say. We are selling it today. We are selling our fiber, that's for sure. But the clinic said you have to sell the package. So you have to arrange it. We are missing one puzzle in that package, and that is the software. So the agreement with IGT in France is the first step, and that's very important for us. So that's a main part, as I say, in this case. But also, as I said before, there are the other case when it comes to MRI, which is a company in USA. Two parts of them is that we are going into a new area, which is neuro and spine. We are not experts, but they are, so we hope very much for them. And the second agreement with MRI was also important. It was that it generated 20 new salespersons for us in USA, which was fantastic. It is fantastic. Yeah. Now we are in the step of educating these people to see to that they are fully equipped to sell our products. And the fourth area, as I said before, is the possibility to work together with exact imaging in the area there where you can really see to that you offer something to the main doctors working in the urology area. They normally don't have an MR situation. So this is an offer that really can be good. And I will also stress that for me, I would say that our studies that shows that we have a survival of around 17 months in IMILT is of course a fantastic situation. And I believe that it's not only in pancreatic cancer. This is a possibility for a lot of other indications.
And then strengthening the sales force, like you said, in the US, and also then being able to present these strong study results. When do you expect the full impact from these advantages?
That's a very tricky question to answer. It's always difficult, and I've been here for 11 years now. I know how difficult it is. I would say that we take it step by step. I believe that we will have a very great possibility of improving the sales of IMILT, but also the possibilities to sell the FLA area will be very positive in, let's say, after the middle of next year.
Okay.
Then we can start that. And the third area, which is the MRI situation with the neuro and spine, will probably come in 2020. So that's our time schedule.
Okay. We're running a bit short of time, but we're looking forward to further progress. Thank you very much, Lars-Erik.
Thank you.
And the next speaker is actually our final speaker. I'm pretty sure he is also eager to talk about some study results. Please welcome Martin Wallé from BrainCool. Thank you, Martin.
Tjena. So wonderful. Does it work? It did work. It did work for me. Okay, wonderful. Okay. So there it is. My name is Martin Wallé. I'm CEO of BrainCool, a medical device company from Lund that was started in 2014. We have developed two business units over the years, and today I will focus on the area of brain cooling, where we have two medical devices, the BrainCool system and the RhinoShield. And I will also take the opportunity to give our takeaway message from a clinical trial, the Princess, that was presented at American Heart the other weekend. However, this clinical trial will lead to up to 4 or 5 clinical scientific publications, which is not yet published. So I'm a little bit restrained of going into detail, but would surely provide you with good information. So, the effect of loss of blood supply to the brain in cardiac arrest and stroke have been heavily documented over the years. There's a number of famous cases where skiers have been fallen into cold lakes and taken to hospitals and ending up having full brain recovery after some weeks. That has led to a very interesting market of cooling down patients for sudden cardiac arrest and stroke patients, which is very, very big patient populations. The business unit of brain cooling comprises of 2 devices. We have a RhinoShield system, which you can cool down the patients from the scene of the cardiac arrest or stroke in some cases, in the street, in the ambulance, follow that through to the emergency room until the ICU, where we have a surface cooling system called the BrainCool system, a continuum of care setup. This treatment has been widely accepted in sudden cardiac arrest. And I would like to give an overview of the current guidelines of the American Heart Association, where there's a level of evidence, number 1, that all patients have to be cooled in cardiac arrest in American hospitals today. And this is the current guidelines. There's 3 phases of hypothermia. It's the induction phase, going down to target temperature. There's a maintenance phase, keeping the patient controlled for 24 hours, sometimes 72 hours, and a rewarming phase, which should be controlled and well maintained. So, and in the guidelines it said the cooling should be rapid, effective, it should be controlled, but it also clearly says time is a critical factor. you get a 20% increase of mortality for every hour of delay starting cooling. There's a 6% increase in the risk of poor outcome for every set of 5 minutes that the patient gets cooling later on. This is the current guidelines in America that all hospitals have to cool cardiac arrest patients. Then there are European guidelines, there are some national guidelines in Europe, there's Canadian guidelines, but most of them look at the American guidelines, which is roughly similar. But the American Heart Association is a very, very strong group that affects guidelines internationally. And today's availability of cooling of cardiac arrest patients today is only late state cooling. You start cooling at the ICU with products like the BrainCool system. That is what's offered today. The BrainCool solution of combining these two devices, we have the RhinoChill device, which you can start cooling in the Princess trial after average 90 minutes after cardiac arrest, cool the patients in the ambulance, cool the patients from the hospital emergency entry through the different tests up to the ICU, where we change to our product, the BrainCool system, which is an advanced computerized system for maintenance cooling, where we have experience of cooling patients up to 5-6 days. And this is our solution that we now are going to enter and make a serious market launch with. Here are some examples of the RhinoChill use. This is a photo of Freiburg, the courtesy of Freiburg. This is in their doctor cars, how they fit in the RhinoChill. It's been used in Freiburg in 150 patients the last couple of years outside of clinical trial. This is a photo from Darmstadt, and I think this is with the BrainCool system at a hospital in Sweden. And I would like to take the opportunity to give a sort of example of a temperature curve. This is an ongoing on an SMS from a stroke professor in Germany. To give an example where the cool down awake patient, stroke patient with the BrainCool system, where you can see the induction phase. So RhinoChill has not been used. Induction phase with the BrainCool system going into the maintenance phase. And here they're going to cool this patient for 39 hours. And he did send this photo after 19 hours. But this is an example how exact the BrainCool system do the maintenance phase. This is a very stable patient curve where we, from the BrainCool side, could really say now the evaluations of BrainCool system in Sweden and Germany really show examples how exact, precise the BrainCool system is, which is very, very important for the long-term launch. Det funkar inte då. The market and competition then for our two devices, the RhinoChill system and the BrainCool system. The RhinoChill, as I told before, there is no competition. There's no products available before the ICU. Okay. And this has now been assessed in a clinical trial, the Princess trial that was presented at American Heart. I will tell you some takeaways later. The BrainCool system is an advanced maintenance cooling. Our first product to market, CE-marked, and it's also FDA cleared. There is competition from Bard, which is bought by Becton Dickinson, from Alcius, which was bought by Sol, which was bought by a Japanese conglomerate, which has an endovascular solution using cold saline. Stryker has entered the market. GeneTerm has bought. So this is 4 of our main competition in America and Europe. All of these companies has been formed by acquisitions. And we have worked intensely in the development of BrainCool to bring a product to the market which has been heavily assessed in Germany and Sweden, looking at all the clinical evidence of these other products, saying, okay, we are now on the level or maybe more advanced in applying cooling for a number of different set of patients. The US market today we assess to 200 to 250 million US dollars per year. It's high growth in this market due to further implementation of cooling of cardiac arrest patients and a big implementation of cooling of neurological patients. So in America it's used also for a lot of fever management of neuro patients in stroke and TBI. So we think our aim is to be a leader in cardiac arrest, but also help to enable a bigger increase of the use in the market of neurology. We have a number of patents, intellectual product portfolio. I will not go into detail, but both the BrainCool system, the Rhinochill, has a number of approved patents from China to America. So very strong patent protection for our products. We also have a number of patents approved for our oncology and migraine applications. That's included in this. I would like to give a sort of a little overview before going into the Princess trial about clinical trials in hypothermia. Already Socrates and Napoleon in the Russian war used hypothermia on military patients that has been damaged in war, having in snow to try to help brain recovery. What really started the implementation in hospital is 2 clinical trials, one in Australia, Bernard trial, and one run out of Finland, a multi-center European trial, looking at cardiac arrest survival compared to a control group of no treatment of VF patients. I will come back to that. So this is the basis for implementation of cardiac arrest. That took until 2010 to really get that accepted and get into the European guidelines. And in these guidelines, they also recommend pre-hospital cooling, where they use cold saline. And then comes 2 clinical trials in 2013, TTM1 and the KIM study. The KIM study assessed pre-hospital cooling and hospital cooling using cold saline. And the outcome of that trial is that it was dangerous for patients to use cold saline. So this led to that pre-hospital coolings were taken out of the guidelines. First, they took away pre-hospital cooling, everything, and then they understood, okay, we take out pre-hospital cooling using cold saline because it's dangerous for patients. But currently, there are no other options. The TTM trial is an interesting trial led from Lund University, where they cool cardiac arrest patients, one arm 33 degrees and the other arm 36 degrees. That clinical trial came to the conclusion that there was no difference in survival. A big criticism to this clinical trial is that these patients were started cooling 5-6 hours after the cardiac arrest. Remember the Princess trial, it was 90 minutes. 5-6 hours in a patient groups where you can have a mortality of up to 90%. So this trial has been heavily criticized, even though it's an interesting trial, that you could get equally good results only cooling down to 36 degrees. Personally, I think that's wrong, and this has actually led to a second clinical trial because this has been so heavily criticized on different markets. But bear in mind, also cooling down to 36 could lead to good results, and it's actually even more complicated than cool down the patients to 33 degrees, because when you come around 35, 36 degrees, your body starts shivering, which is often a sort of a hurdle for these cooling products to be implemented. Then we've been involved in a big clinical trial which was funded by the European Union called the EuroHIP, where the European Union invested with leading stroke researchers of trying to make a clinical trial cooling down patients to 34 degrees compared to a placebo control group. This clinical trial succeeded only in recruiting 100 patients. It was a very complex pharmaceutical clinical trial that they tried to implement in 28 countries. So it hasn't led to any meaningful results because the number of patients were too small. However, for BrainCool, this has been a very good experience because our aim with the BrainCool system is to be the best of cooling awake patients. And that has led to a number of customers. We are working with the biggest stroke center in Germany today and cooling stroke patients like I just gave you an example of. The Princess trial then, I will give you a little bit takeaway message from, was a big clinical trial led by Karolinska that had just been presented in American Heart of 700 sudden cardiac arrest patients that would start cooling already after 90 minutes. This has led to a new clinical trial called the TTM2, where they compare cooling to 33, comparing to a control group where you just control the fever, around 37. Where BrainCool is participating in a sub-study. It's a hospital trial where we start with Rhinochill from the emergency room and then change to the BrainCool system at the ICU. So, the key takeaway from the PRINCESS study. So the PRINCESS trial is a multi-center clinical trial that's been led by the Karolinska Institute in 7 different European countries. This will lead to a number of scientific publications, which is not official yet. So this is the BrainCool takeaway message of what's available on the internet today. Earlier cooling with the Rhinochill will go into guidelines because this trial clearly showed that this was safe and feasible. Remember now the guidelines from American Heart. All hospitals have to cool cardiac arrest patients, and you should cool them as quickly as possible. This is the only solution that has been proven to be safe and feasible to implement to cool as quickly as possible. There was also a statistically significant improvement which resulted in better neurological intact patients with CPC1, meaning that the patients that was cooled within 13 minutes, which is very, very quickly, you had 70% ending up in full brain recovery. Then there is 5 different categories where number 1 is very, very unusual. You get your cardiac arrest, you get your hypothermia treatment, and you will go to work in 1 week's time. Already in CPC2, you will be affected. You will be affected. Conscious, sufficient cerebral function with independent activities of daily life, able to work in a sheltered environment. When? After a period of rehabilitation. So obviously there will be a huge health economic output of this trial. And if this set of patients, for example, could be translated into other areas, such as stroke. If we can find a subset of patients in stroke, where every stroke patient in Sweden costs nearly 1 million Swedish crowns. Of course, there's a huge potential of implementing the Rhinochill close to the CPR as quickly as possible. So I also told you that the Rhinochill is safe. This study shows we don't have to discuss the outcomes. You can say, it's safe and feasible to use this product. Bear in mind the American guidelines. You should cool patients, every patient in America, as quickly as possible. And that's the same, for example, in Germany. There you can also say that Rhinochill cools the brain with a method in out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. It actually could shorten the time to target. Another, it's important to cool the patient as quickly as possible, but it's important to reach the target temperature as quickly as possible, like the example that I showed with the BrainCool system. So the idea is, in the ambulance, when they do the CPR, you should cool as quickly as possible in conjunction with the Rhinochill. Then you might ending up having this opportunity. This trial didn't show statistical significance, however, in the primary outcome of survival of the patients. Bear in mind, it's not for me to argue, but the clinical trial document, the clinical trial protocol was written in 2009. There's a huge knowledge of hypothermia that has come up to now. So maybe they were unrealistic to argue that we're going to improve survival of 20–22% in a subset of 700 patients. In a cardiac arrest trial in the pharmaceutical community, where of course they have much more money and can do clinical trials in 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 patients, it's judged to be a huge advantage if you can reach improved survival of 2–3%. So maybe it was not realistic, maybe not, it's not for me to say. But I would say the takeaway from the PRINCESS study that we've seen so far, and I think this will be heavily supported in the coming scientific publication, is very, very interesting. BrainCool as a company has presented part of this together with the researchers. For the chairman of the American Resuscitation Meeting, we met the chairman of the American Heart Organization, and we are in work to present this for leading key opinion leaders in Germany, Holland, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, right now as it is. So the trick, of course, long term, combine the two products, the RhinoShield and the BrainCool system. That will bring us the best market. So the targets of BrainCool today, bear in mind hypothermia products up to now is approved as medical devices for general hypothermia, not for indications. So the target for sudden cardiac arrest, you probably understand that the combination of these two products is now going to be launched, and our goal is to finally start to launch a combination of two unique devices to take on and building sales. We still think that stroke is a very interesting field. The outcome of the EuroHip trial wasn't as positive as the European hoped for, because all these stroke centers hasn't been able to implement this hugely complex protocol. The experience for BrainCool has been good. We've been better in cooling awake patients. We received EU funding of 1.2 million euro for a brain save project where we work with the leading stroke center in Finland and in Darmstadt, one of the biggest stroke hospitals in Germany, to further implement and improve this technology. We also have started a project of combining the RhinoShield and the BrainCool system for a subset of stroke patients called thrombectomy. I'll tell you a little bit more of that. In the US, there's a large growth in demand of cooling neurological patients with fever. So avoid that the patient get fever. There's a huge economic benefit in that. And that's more of cooling a patient to 36, 37, and if they get a fever, getting them down to 37. And that might sound simple, but that also demands a lot of complexity, and it also requires a lot of faith in the device, because you could cool these patients up to 10 days. And we are the only device in America that's approved for cooling patients more than 5 days. We're the only device. There's no cap, because there is trust in the BrainCool ICL system, as they call it in the USA, that we actually could cool patients more than 5 days. Okay, there will be a new segment here. VF patients should be cooled as quickly as possible. There's no reason in the world why this shouldn't lead to implementing RhinoShield in the ambulance. I'm now going to give you an example of the most successful medical device implemented in the hospitals the last recent years. There's one device called Lucas. It's actually from Lund. It was developed by a Swedish company that was acquired by Physio Control. That's now approved by Stryker. And they have a competition from Autopuls, which is a device from Sol, who was also a competitor of BrainCool in the hypothermia segment. Their best clinical trial shows that this may be as positive as doing chest compression manually. That is the basis. In the case of Autopuls, it even says in this clinical trial, the only randomized controlled clinical trial, yeah, but it's a little bit dangerous. It's actually much more dangerous than doing this manual. This is the clinical evidence for implementing in thousands of patients. Compare that to the Princess trial, where there's a statistically significance in the VF patients that 70% of these patients, if you cool them within 13 minutes, will have almost complete brain recovery. There's a huge potential in that, both for the patient, for the society, and most of all, for the shareholders, health economics. What is the value of getting that number of patients to have full brain recovery? That is something that I hope this clinical trial publications will give you more information. I think I've said enough about sudden cardiac arrest. Health economic benefit, CPC 1, 2, and why not bringing all the patients for CPC 2, which is good, to CPC 1. Neurogenic fever. Fever has shown to be related to extended hospital stays in neurologically injured patients. This is from an American clinical trial. This is also in guidelines in America in neurology. So this is a fact, and there's a growth in demand where we have made financial calculations that you can save up to $17,000 to implement brain cooling with the BrainCool system in this set of patients. Stroke, I told you about the EuroHip experience. We are dedicated to continue to work. We work with the biggest stroke center in Germany, assessing the BrainCool system very successfully, cooling awake patients today. We have strong support by EU. All our further development is paid by EU funds. And we define the sector thrombectomy patients, where you're mechanically removing the blood clot from the blood vessel. That has shown improved survival, and it's a huge success in the treatment of stroke. Here we will cool patients together with thrombectomy, because these patients are sedated, so we can implement the RhinoChill directly. And our aim was to either further improve the survival of this patient, which is a huge success, or why not? Why not say, okay, let's say survival is equal, but if we can translate the Princess result, saying if you cool the patient before reperfusion after 15 minutes, already in the ambulance, and could have potentially a 70% full recovery of a stroke patient, that cost the Swedish society, every stroke cost the Swedish society 1 million Swedish crown. If we would benefit 5% of that, 50,000, our medical device to be implemented in the ambulance, could be fairly interesting. We have run patients with the RhinoChill, the BrainCool system, in thrombectomy already. Hope that will lead to interesting scientific publications. And we would run a 30 or 50 patient trial the first quarter of 2019 with a cost of 10,000 euros with Darmstadt and University of Freiburg in Germany. We think this could be a very interesting area. And here we have an example of, here we implement the RhinoChill already in the ambulance. We work on the technical integration, that it should be as smooth as possible to change the BrainCool system. That lacks a little bit today, not with the BrainCool system, but when you try to implement pre-hospital cooling, it hasn't been a good fit into the cooling in ICU. And when you stop cooling, there's a risk of rewarming the patient, which could be very negative. We work with development of a temperature sensor to measure the temperature in the brain, which also is funded by the European Union, which hopefully will be a separate product add-on to this. By all means, it's been complicated implementing BrainCool system in the stroke area, cooling of awake patients, but we are very, very positive that we received funding from the European Union, and we think we will be able to raise even more non-dilutive funding for these projects. So brain cooling today, where are we? We have 2 CE mark devices. The BrainCool system is already FDA cleared. Everyone in the room understands, okay, the Princess trial, everybody waited for it. So of course, on the assembly line is to present the Princess trial when there come a number of publications for the US FDA to see or share if they have the same attitude as us. We completed clinical trials, product evaluation, solid results also for the BrainCool system. We are currently conducting cost reduction programs for our devices to Asian players in Taiwan, Vietnam, in Poland. We have a number of reference customers, Sweden and Germany, and we have a route to market strategy defined. So how on earth should BrainCool now take this to be a commercial success? We're going to build sales in German sales, where we will set up a direct sales operation. I will tell you about the management right now. We have a US organization of 3 employees that soon will be 5, with very experienced management, and we're going to build partner sales network based on that we make a success in Germany and the US. If you make it in Germany, you make it in the rest of the EU, with or without Angela Merkel. If you make it in the US, yeah, with Trump, that's good enough. But if you make it in both, you're in a very good position to build a partner network. We're changing the organization. We have a very experienced global sales and marketing head called Brian Nicholson. He built the business of Arctic Sun, our main competitor in the US. We hired their chief nurse, who conducted all the training for Arctic Sun in the US. We hired a third person, a very good young sales guy that sold a number of Arctic Sun devices. They take the work in BrainCool for one reason: we got good product. We changed his role now. He should focus only on the major market, the US market. Europe will be held by Elmar Landwehr. He built all the business for the company Sol between 2010 and 12 for another of our biggest competitor. We have 3 persons, 2 working on commission, working very hard now in Germany. And we will continue. Our previous sales director, Christian Strand, a very important person in the company, will then focus supporting this too, of course, as a product manager, but also to build distribution sales. So in the US right now, we have one product approved, the iCool system, 2019. Full focus, sales implementation of the iCool. We have a number of evaluations going with the iCool in the US, a few of them in a big healthcare system, where the potential in one healthcare system could be bigger than the whole market of Sweden. Germany focus on two things, BrainCool system and the Rhinochill. We should first get Rhinochill into ambulances in Germany. There's a high belief in hypothermia. We have a number of reference customers for the Rhinochill, even outside of the Princess trial. Partner sales will be BrainCool, Rhinochill and Coral system, which is a very interesting oncology device. We already got orders, we got Fast Track from the USA, and we have a number of interesting clinical trials. Maybe I have time to give a short pitch in the interview afterwards. But these two operations, we should focus only on BrainCool and deliver business for us in 2019. So summary, unique products, good patent protection. Every product is a cash flow product. Every treatment is a device and then it's scrapped. So it's a very good model. We established experienced sales operation. Okay, BrainCool's been up for 4 years. We've done an excellent job, to be honest. You can look at the other medical device companies that don't even get to see marking. We're talking about a huge effort to bring all these products to market. But let's say, maybe we're not the right one to really build the sales. I finally recruited the one that built BART sales in America. In Germany, who built the most business there, Elmar Landver, they're working from BrainCool. We are finding the right management to take this company to the next step. Princess will result in a huge step forward for implementation of hypothermia throughout the world. For shareholders, you did note all my competitors, big medical device companies, they've been bought 1, 2, 3, 4 times. There's hypothermia device companies in the US that could raise $15 million US, and they're still in animal studies, 10 years from where BrainCool is today. The ambulance, of course, it's difficult to get products into ambulance. Bear in mind, there was cooling, pre-hospital cooling, that then was prohibited. So now there is no cooling. Now that has to be restarted. It's not an easy task, I have to admit. Pre-hospital cooling, different budgets than the hospital market, often less money, and often very fragmented, even in Germany, even in America, even in Pennsylvania. But why should Lucas' device be such a success? Hey, and not Rhinochill. At least we got evidence. Oncology, potential, first mover, will be for another presentation. That's it.
Thank you, Martin. Speaking in overdrive as usual. It's great.
I tried to be calm this time.
Yeah, no, it's you have a lot to say. That's cool. So obviously, I'm aware you can't really discuss details of the Princess study. Perhaps I'm understanding that it's because of the upcoming publications that will be published in scientific magazines and so. But given the fact that the primary endpoint was not met, but then there was secondary endpoints that were positive, will it be the tipping point for kind of changing the general view on medical cooling?
I would say yes. Read the American guidelines. Every hospital should cool cardiac arrest patients in America, and you should cool them as quickly as possible. Here you got a method that's safe and feasible. You're comparing in this clinical trial not to a control group. That is nothing. You're comparing to the golden standard. Okay? You're comparing to patients where this worked. It's difficult to show improved survival. And one can question, how on earth could they think they could improve survival of 22%? But that was not unrealistic to think based on the feasibility studies done in 2010. But at that point, the implementation of cooling in the control group, so to say, it was much inferior to what it is today. Then, of course, the Princess trial over the years have had some difficulties because BrainCool came into the middle and bought the device, and the American companies didn't really focus. So, of course, there's been big recruitment, then lower, and then BrainCool pushed this up to a higher scale. So, but I would say the short answer to the question is yes, this will definitely change the implementation, and we're going to prove it.
So you would then say that you have, well, clinical evidence, and you have a top-notch sales force in place in the US, in Germany.
Still small, but
yeah,
we have to start somewhere.
Yeah. So when will we see the big impact on BrainCool's sales?
We understand what's at stake. I mean, there's a budget that's going to be set right now. BrainCool has to build serious sales in Germany, in the US, 2019. We'll build some sales with distributors, but the most important strategically is home markets. And now we just define Germany as our home market for a number of reasons. The market is bigger, and we have already a lot of customers, and we work in our other projects already with the biggest stroke center in Germany. So 2019, we take the first steps. Then in a couple of years, we will have sales exceeding Bonesupport that you just said. Okay.
Emil might have to take you up on that challenge.
Bonesupport sales today, not where they will sell in 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So, final question. We are running out of time here. You mentioned that you had discussions then with some key players after the Princess trial was presented. What can you tell us about the general uptake of the results?
One should say this is a very interesting clinical trial that was presented at 2 different meetings at the same time. The big American heart, which include everything. And then it was presented at the lunch session at the resuscitation meeting, which is really what this product is about, resuscitation, sort of a specialized subgroup. And of course, a presentation at American Heart has a scientifically focus of presenting the primary outcome. Okay, what was the primary outcome of this trial? And it should be presented as it did not meet statistical significant results, even though the survival was 10% higher. Maybe that could have been a realistic target with more patients. But I would say from the outcome of the people that work with these devices of the resuscitation meeting, there were standing ovations. I mean, I'm just saying how it is. This is a very difficult trial to implement. They succeeded in cooling patients within 90 minutes. The standard of care is 5-6 hours. And I would like to quote the first, there was a question session that was going on for 20 minutes after this, and they had to stop it because people, and the first German doctor, a professor from, I think it was Heidelberg, said, "Oh God, if I get in cardiac arrest, could somebody help to cool me quickly?" That is what the doctors think in the street. But the most financial interesting question for a shareholder of BrainCool is, okay, will this trial lead to, like many other companies, to yet another trial? And that question is no. We will take the prince, the princess, combine these results, start pushing this to the market. We will not invest in further pre-hospital clinical trials in Europe. If the NIH would come and say we want to do a big trial in America, of course we would say yes. But BrainCool's money will not go to further clinical trials with RhinoShield.
Okay. I think we'll end it there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you to all of you who were here listening today, and to all of you online watching the webcast. BioStock will now take a recess until January, when we will come back with the next thing. And that's actually going to be a live broadcast from Copenhagen. So see you back then. Thank you very much.